Happy Friday, friends. It's time for props from the past, digging into an old project. When did we do this?
6 years ago.
6 years ago. My. This was actually a commission. So a friend of mine who works at Crystal Dynamics asked me to make Laura Croft's bow from Tomb Raider. Not the newest one, the one before that, right?
Yeah, that one was so much fun. I remember we played that one a bunch.
I did play that one. I haven't played the newest one, but the one we made for the bow from, I played and I used the bow almost exclusively. I love using bows in video games. Half-Life, the crossbow, one of my favorites, or Half-Life 2 especially.
Far Cry.
Far Cry, I love all the bows.
Yeah.
In fact, that was my favorite bow hunting human simulator.
Thief, I imagine.
Thief,
back when
yeah,
you
a
played
lot of
that.
bows.
Yep.
So I was really excited to make this bow, and it was basically like as a display piece for like going to conventions, and they had some cosplayers that were would use the bow dressed as Laura Croft. I did end up making a mold and casting more and sending them for a couple more of the cosplayers they had in mind to promote the game. But we made this one for the video and sent it off all finished to them, and they seemed pretty happy with it. And as I recall, I made it in two pieces, one to make a smaller mold, or two smaller molds, but two so that the bow could actually come apart in the middle. And I can't remember if the one we finished, I think that one was a fully solid one.
I guess we'll find out.
We'll find out. But
I do remember you having to do that.
Yeah, because some of the cosplayers would have wanted to take it apart to travel with it. So that's what I remember about this build. Let's jump in and see how it went. Oh, look at you showing off that bow. My very own Laura Croft right here.
I love how I knew going into that
hey everyone,
that I was going to hold the bow wrong, because no matter what I do, it was going to be wrong.
Yeah.
I recently got hired by Crystal Dynamics to make a bow. Not just any bow though, Laura Croft's new bow from the new Tomb Raider game.
Oh yeah.
So I did it, I built it, and I'm going to show you.
I don't think I even have any footage from the game.
I started out by drawing up some
art though, so the image I'm using, that's like the concept art that their artists whipped together and sent straight to me.
Yeah, I remember that was like secret, like, oh my gosh, they sent us the concept art. Like, whoa! And then it was probably before the game even came out.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so we had the secret information.
But also, look at that image. It's like a perfect front, back, and side reference image of the bow. Like,
yeah, kudos to the concept artist for doing that.
And I felt a little spoiled just having to trace this thing. But that's exactly what I did.
Using Inkscape, following some concept art that I got from Crystal Dynamics. Then I took that blueprint and I printed it out full scale so that I could use it to transfer to some wood and build my pieces. I cut out several lengths of MDF wood,
that was the MDF
laminated
era.
Those together to get the thickness that I needed for each of the bow pieces. Then I transferred
I still do
my
that
templates
MDF today. Probably. It depends. Really depends on the output. So I knew I was going to mold and cast this. If I was making a one-off, I'd probably make it out of an actual wood, like ash. I think ash is a wood that gets used for bows.
Steve Meisner from Solo Roboto did the next Laura Croft bow for Crystal Dynamics, and I believe his was a 3D print. And he had to do a bunch of cleanup on it, but that let him get a lot of the built-in details that they had in the model.
Yeah.
To those MDF pieces.
That was many years later than
cut
this.
them out roughly using
so the MDF was we decided on it because we knew we were going to mold and cast.
All those rough
because if you try and if that bends at all, especially in the thin spots, it'll break.
And traced on my profile shapes to get both axes looking really nice. Again, I cut those out using the bandsaw.
Those pieces are actually hanging up downstairs. I glued them together and hung them up on the wall.
I love that spindle sander. And cleaned up all those surfaces. I also used a hand sander to get it really nice looking.
MDF
Once I was
dust,
happy with the
gross.
shape,
now this was pretty soon after we had bought our first bandsaw, and that kind of work where you like trace both profiles and then cut them out on a bandsaw. That's something that a lot of people do, but our buddy Jimmy DeResta does a lot of that. So I think I pulled a lot of inspiration from him there. But once you have those profiles cut out, then you have to contour everything, and that's what we're doing here, making lots of MDF.
Back in with that lovely spindle sander and rounded over all of the edges to get a really nice contoured shape. I grabbed my hand sander again and did a bunch of finishing work on it, and then finally used a little bit of elbow grease and some sandpaper to get it all nice and cleaned up.
This is basically sculpting, just with a sandpaper. Very slow, subtractive sculpting.
The bow has lots of these nice carved, etched lines in it. So I did all that by first tracing it on
by hand,
pencil, and then I went
you want them to
with
be
my
very specific, which is why I imagine you didn't go with
lines
pine or something
those
that
lines
had
then got
already
cleaned
had
up
wood grain,
with some
right?
Sandpaper. The bow also has these cool cross pieces on.
I don't make real bows. I've never made a real bow before, but I imagine you don't cut out the C shape out of a piece of wood. You take a straight piece and you bend it so that all the grain is going with it. Actually, when I made that steampunk bow,
yes, you did.
I made it all out of wood.
You did a take on the character Brave.
Yeah,
the
Merida's bow from Brave.
Yeah.
But I made it all steampunk. The curved ends of it, like cut out of a piece of wood, and where the grain kind of wasn't running with it, it just snapped right off. So if you were going to make a prop bow out of real wood, that wood grain is really, really important.
Yeah. And I imagine most conventions don't want you to bring a bow that has any kind of action to it. So that's something to consider.
Yeah. This one, I probably go into it later, but this one just has an elastic string on it. It doesn't, the bow part itself doesn't really bend or flex at all.
On 4 parts of it. So I busted out my trusty laser cutter and cut those pieces out. First testing the fit on a scrap piece of wood, and then when I was happy with it, I
was one of the
drilled
first
some holes into the bow pieces and then glued those
like big projects I use that laser on
into the final piece. The edges where it connects got filled in with some super glue and then sanded down flush.
That's very
satisfying.
satisfying.
Then I used a round file to go and carve in a bunch more of the detail on the end of the bow. Once I was happy with that, I used some sandpaper to clean it up so that it was
most of this project is all
When I was happy
handwork.
with all of the
really
carving and
that.
sculpting on the bow, I sprayed the whole thing with some filler primer
the
to
old paint
knock
room.
back a bunch of the MDF texture. Then the whole thing got sanded down, and I traced on a bunch.
That's when we used to do lots of MDF stuff. A question I got all the time was like, how do you get rid of the fuzziness of it? And that filler primer works great, but you have to put on enough filler primer that when you sand it smooth, you're not sanding all the way through the filler primer back down to the MDF.
Yeah.
So sometimes what I would end up doing is hitting the whole thing with filler primer, sanding it, hitting it again, and then giving it a very light sanding after that. You basically want the whole finish to be that filler primer.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, if you're new to the Extra Credit Club, welcome. Welcome to the club. But also, the view you're seeing is, if you've watched our new shop tour video, this is where the sanding station is now, right where Bill's standing. Yeah. So that table and everything, Bill has since turned into shelves. It's no longer there anymore. And that peg wall is now where the unfinished props are.
Yeah.
There. It's just interesting to think of. That's the same space.
In fact, that's
6 years ago.
Kind of where the Tomb Raider bow is hanging right now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's kind of right there.
Yeah. That's great.
It's a pretty cool Scottish Ninja shirt I'm rocking too. The friends of ours. Look up the Scottish Ninjas on YouTube and watch all of their videos. Are fun.
A bunch of lines to simulate some wood grain. Those wood grains were then carved in again with
old rotary tool.
Dremel. Then I did a whole bunch of filling and priming.
That was one of our wedding presents.
I was really happy with the finish on the bow.
We got 5 good years out of it.
Prepare it for mold making. When it was ready to go, I mixed up a bunch of silicone to make my mold. The silicone got degassed, and then I poured a whole bunch of it onto the clay.
The tin cure silicone. It's dead simple to use.
Once one side cured, I flipped it over and did the same thing on the other side.
See, Bill has little supports
mold.
on the sides of the mold.
Oh yeah, let me go back real quick.
It's one of the things you don't think about when you have that much liquid, is it's going to want to bow out.
Yeah, these little kind of gussets, I guess. I don't know. That keep it from buckling out. Yeah,
exactly. And you can also like put them on top, which makes it harder to pour. But yeah, this was a great way to do it.
Right. When I was doing the scope on the Ghost rifle, I didn't do that, and the walls buckled, and like $30 of silicone just leaked out the bottom and onto the floor.
Now, did you do that one first before this one?
That was a long time ago. That was much before.
Yeah, so you learned.
I've learned. Yeah.
Once one side cured, I flipped it over and did the same thing on the other side.
Wasting money is a great way to learn.
Yeah.
Great way to remember.
And I've wasted a lot of
cavity in the silicone. I
Those
then
are some nice
sandwiched those back
molds.
They
together
still look great.
and filled
I've
it up
had to
with
use them a few
tinted
times.
urethane
They're like
resin
really
and allowed
nice.
it to cure. Once the resin cures, it turns into a solid chunk of plastic, and I can peel the mold away, revealing below the wonderful, nice looking
Hardly a seam.
finished piece.
Hardly. That's
I did this for both sides of the bow
Proud of
because there
that.
were 2 parts.
and I tinted the resin brown, so just in case the paint gets scratched off instead of it being bright white, it's got that nice brown underneath.
It's always something to consider is tinting the resin the color that is least offensive if it takes
Yeah.
damage.
And then I cleaned up the pieces. There's a little bit of flash left over, so that all had to be sanded down to look all nice and pretty. Then the bow pieces
Yeah.
were joined at the middle using a threaded metal rod so it
Yes.
would be nice and structurally sound.
Yeah, and that's where you could make that connection temporary if you wanted to. I do believe in this way, make it permanent.
That left the seam between the 2
Yeah.
pieces. I used a little bit of body filler
yeah,
in there to
the
fill in
later
that
ones
seam,
you definitely
sand
did
it
a
down
T-nut
flush, and then
connection.
carve those
Right.
lines
Yeah.
back in so that it all looks like one big bow piece. With the bow completely
And there was
assembled,
there
it
was
was
an obvious
time for
seam, but-
paint. I hit it with a base.
But the cosplayer's gonna be holding that part when they're posing, so you don't see the seam.
Yeah. I also wrapped some like fabric around it or something.
Yeah,
Like you make it
yeah.
look nice.
Coat of Krylon dark brown paint. This Krylon Fusion paint really likes to bond to the plastic really well. Once that dried, I did a whole bunch of masking and spraying to get the rest of the colors on the...
Real quick note about Krylon Fusion paint. Their formula for their paint may be different now than it used to be, and it also might be different depending on the state you live in and what rules you have. But at least back then, that Krylon Fusion paint is for plastic, and it claims that it dries fast, and it is the only spray paint I've found that actually meets those claims. For one of our books, I was showing how you don't want to put masking tape on spray paint right away because it'll peel it off.
Yeah.
And the Krylon Fusion paint dried so fast that by the time I'd sprayed it, grabbed my tape, and stuck it on there, it wouldn't come off. I was actually surprised at how quickly it like actually dried.
Yeah, it's super stinky stuff. But I mean, like we saw advertised for like boat hulls, like fishing boat hulls, to do camo patterns, and as long as you have a nice tooth on the plastic that you're applying it to, so it's nice and sanded, it doesn't want to chip off.
Right. And now it may not be fully dried after like 15 minutes, but it's dry enough that I can mask on top of it, which makes the impatient prop maker and me very happy.
And I also like how the it's not satin or glossy. It's very flat. 'Cause again, it's kind of designed for camo pattern.
Yeah, this one might be the specific camo fusion paint, matte camo fusion paint.
I always like getting those.
Yeah.
Bow, including a darker green on one part and a lighter sort of whitish gray for the rest of it. Once that was done, I could peel away the
that's
masking
the best
tape,
part.
revealing the fully painted bow beneath. The bow also has this nice gold design on it. So I cut out a stencil using my
Look at
vinyl cutter
your
and then laid that vinyl
right?
down right on the bow. So
now
that
you
I
had the
could
vinyl cutter
paint
for a
some
bit, but I think the
paint
laser
on
cutter
top
was
of it.
very new.
And all I had to do was peel away the vinyl, revealing a wonderful gold pattern below. Then once all of the paint was dry, I went and scuffed up the whole thing using some sanding sponges.
So this was super fun, and partially because I knew that if I chewed through the paint, I'd get down to that lighter brown, and I was okay with that. So to start weathering it, all I had to do was start sanding it. I don't think I put any primer on. I think that base coat of brown, that Krylon, I used as the primer base.
That's really smart.
So that I wouldn't sand through this and hit gray paint. But it gives you, like, it makes it look like this exactly like what happened here, is that it was painted in layers, and then over time, those layers started to wear off.
This would create gouges in the paint that would capture some of the weathering paint later on and add a little bit of texture to the bow. To weather it, I used a bunch of...
I can tell that I have a script just out of screen that I'm like looking at and then cutting that part out.
As you're finishing your line, you're already starting to look down. And it's like, I can't cut that because I'm still talking.
I'm still talking.
acrylic paints like brown and yellow ochre and some blacks. And essentially we just mix up a bunch of paint, slather it all over the bow, and then wipe most of it off, leaving it to sort of
See, that's a
soak
great
into the
visual. It's one of the first
crevices and
videos we
wood grain,
really
giving it a lot
showed
more
this kind
contrast.
of detail
Once
work.
that was all done and I was
so
happy
nice.
with how it turned out, I took that sanding sponge again and scuffed it up even more. This would let me pop out some more of the highlights.
One of the things I really like, in fact, we were watching Adam paint his Colonial Marine armor in a video yesterday on Tested. when you have something fully painted but you haven't done a wash over it yet, it can look too saturated, and the wash will mute those colors.
Yeah.
Which we've done on a lot of our projects. You count on that weathering pass taking all those colors down a touch, but then when you can sand it like this, you can selectively pick where you want the fully saturated color to come back through, which is really fun.
Or pull back some of the areas that got a little too much of the weathering paint. And it also added
you can see that lighter,
contrast.
sort of lighter spot
Once
right
I was
there.
happy with that, the bow was completely done. The only thing left to do was to put a string on it. In this case, I use a piece of elastic and then give it a test run. Sure enough, the bow works. Well, it works, meaning it looks pretty and it's got an elastic string on it. It'll definitely look really cool in photographs.
Oh, yeah.
This was a really fun build. I hope you guys learned a little bit
I love how
about
that thing looks.
prop making and
This
molding
is-
and
I wish I had one
casting.
for myself.
There'll be a link
Well, we can
down
make
below
one.
to
Yeah, we
all
should
of
paint at least. We can even just paint the master.
Right? Yeah, we can
Yeah,
do
it'd be
that.
fun.
I mean, we have the molds.
Mm,
We probably have some spare resin.
probably.
The problem that we're running into is, since we're not doing molding casting projects, all our old resin and silicone is a ticking clock to when
Yeah.
it's going to stop working.
You know,
It eventually goes bad. Not as fast in Seattle. Like, our temperature and humidity here is pretty good, but
yeah, pretty stable,
Yeah.
pretty warm.
we're not opening and closing the containers a lot.
And that'll do it a lot. Yeah.
But yeah, it's something on my mind. So I'm like, what can we cast?
Yeah,
while we still have the stuff.
Use it all.
the different materials and tools that I used for this build. I definitely want to thank Crystal Dynamics for hiring me to build this bow. This thing will be headed their way very, very soon. Also, please, if
I
you're
kind of
new
want
to
to
the
look up
channel,
how much
go
I
ahead and
charge them for
subscribe.
that.
I do these
Or I
kinds
should
of
say
build
how
videos
little I
pretty
charge them for
frequently.
that.
In fact, I've got some more here that you can check out at your leisure and enjoy. Until next time, you guys, thank you for watching, and hey, go out there and build something.
Go out there and
Oh yeah,
build something.
just build
All right, go
anything. Hey.
Here's your example.
Just because I knew people were gonna ask, does it work? No, it doesn't work.
And that's okay.
That was wicked fun. I'm so glad we went back and looked at that old project.
I would have liked to have seen more beauty video of
Yeah.
it. That was before, if you shoot video and do, twice the shutter speed frame rate?
Twice, yeah, so we'll shoot at 60p so that we can slow it down to 30 and it's all
Exactly.
dramatic.
Yeah, so like that's when you see people looking really cool, is when everything's slowed down just a little
Oh
bit.
yeah, and we do. I don't know if you guys noticed, but we do that a lot now in our beauty shots.
It's so much
It's
fun.
really fun. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for taking this trip down memory lane with us. It was really fun. If you have any questions, obviously, let us know. Love getting back to you. And thank you so much for the support. We can't do this without you. Please keep that up. And we'll see you next week with some more shenanigans from the basement. See you, gang.